Criticism. Some use it to grow, most use it to collapse. It doesn't matter who you are. If you create, lead, speak, or live with intention, criticism will find you. Unexpected, uninvited, and sometimes unfair. But here's the truth. It's not the words that hurt. It's your relationship with them. The Stoic knows this. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, faced betrayal, slander, and opposition. Yet he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be." Because criticism is only as strong as your need to be understood. Let that settle. Most people panic under judgment because they still crave approval. They confuse criticism with danger. They believe, if they disapprove, I must defend. If they attack, I must explain. If they don't get me, I must prove myself. But the Stoic doesn't react. They observe. They ask, is this criticism true? Does it come from clarity or from projection? Can this sharpen me, or is it noise? And if it's true, they don't resist it. They absorb it, apply it, thank it. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The Stoic doesn't fear friction, they use it. But if the criticism is baseless, petty, emotional, manipulative, they don't fight it. They don't explain themselves endlessly. They don't lower their presence to meet someone else's storm. They stay still, unmoved, clear, because they know not every opinion is equal. Not every voice deserves space in your mind. Not every comment requires your energy. You're not here to argue, you're here to align. The more grounded you become, the less you react, not out of ego, but out of focus. Because defending yourself all the time is exhausting and unnecessary. If you're building something real, if you're walking your path, if your actions align with your values, you don't need to perform for approval. Criticism comes. You listen, you filter, you act, or don't. But your center, it stays untouched. You don't let someone's bad day become your emotional crisis. This is the difference between a Stoic and the average mind. Most hear criticism and break. The Stoic hears it and chooses. Choose power, choose clarity, choose silence when needed, and action when aligned. Criticism hurts most when it hits the ego, not the soul. You know this feeling, the sting in your chest when someone questions your effort, your decision, your identity. It's not the words, it's the attachment. The ego says, I must be seen as right. I must be understood. I must be praised. So when someone disagrees, your ego rises in defense, anger, explanation, overcorrection. But the Stoic sees that impulse for what it is, an illusion. Epictetus taught, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. In other words, you are not a victim of criticism, you are a participant in how much it affects you. The Stoic doesn't silence their critics. They silence the ego that needs them to agree. And here's the paradox. The stronger your ego, the weaker your peace. So how do you shift? You begin by separating feedback from identity. Criticism is just information. It doesn't define you. It doesn't diminish you. It only reveals where you're attached. If it's useful, apply it. If it's empty, release it. If it's hostile, let it echo into silence. You don't need to fight every misunderstanding. You don't need to correct every false opinion. You don't need to protect a version of yourself you've already outgrown. This is the Stoic detachment, being committed to growth, but not addicted to validation. You can improve without self-judgment. You can listen without losing your voice. You can stand firm, even when someone tries to shake your image, because the goal is not to be seen as flawless. The goal is to be free. Free from chasing praise, free from defending against every glance, free from the ego's addiction to control. And when you reach that place, criticism no longer owns you. It becomes what it always was, data, Some you use, some you ignore, but none of it defines you. You've already chosen who you are, and you walk it quietly. The Stoic listens, not to obey, not to react, but to understand, without becoming consumed. Most people confuse listening with submission. They think hearing someone's critique means surrendering to it. So they close off. They defend. They fight to maintain the image. But the Stoic does none of that. The Stoic listens, like a warrior sharpening their blade. They know some words reveal truth. Others reveal projection. Both are useful, but only if you stay centered, because if you react to every word, you lose your shape. You melt into other people's emotions. You become a mirror, not a mind. So how does a Stoic listen? With detachment, with stillness, with discernment. They ask, is this coming from clarity or from ego? Is this about me or about them? Does this call me higher or simply try to pull me down? And most importantly, can I listen without absorbing? That's the difference. The Stoic doesn't absorb everything. They don't carry every opinion like a wound. They don't let someone's voice become their inner voice. Instead, they observe. If the criticism is grounded, they welcome it, quietly. They say thank you. They apply the insight. No drama, no defense. If the criticism is emotional, they let it pass, like wind. No resistance, no engagement. Because the Stoic knows reaction feeds fire. Stillness starves it. And when you master this, you stop fearing other people's words. You walk into a room without needing to be liked. You receive feedback without losing confidence. You allow someone to disagree without that disagreement shaking your foundation. This is emotional clarity. This is maturity. This is freedom. And here's the secret. People respect you more when you listen without flinching, without defending, without begging to be seen as right, because they feel it, your power. You're not closed. You're just not fragile. You're not rude. You're just not bending. You're not cold. You're just anchored. And that's what makes your presence different. If this shift matters to you, subscribe to Inner Fort, not for validation, but to stay rooted in what truly holds. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. No defense, no explanation, no clever comeback, just silence, anchored in strength. The world teaches you to speak, to reply, to correct every false perception. But the Stoic knows every reaction is a transaction, and not every trade is worth your peace. Seneca said, "Silence is a lesson learned through life's many sufferings." Because silence is not avoidance, it's not passivity, it's clarity. When someone criticizes you with ego, they want a response. They want a spark so they can turn it into a fire. And when you speak back in defense, you've given them what they came for, your focus, your time, your control. But silence, that's different. Silence holds boundaries. It says, I heard you, but I don't owe you my energy. It says, my direction doesn't need your permission. Silence unsettles people because it refuses to feed their expectations. It forces them to sit with their own discomfort. And that's where your power rises. Because when you stop engaging with nonsense, nonsense stops engaging with you. The Stoic doesn't suppress their voice. They sharpen their timing. They speak when it serves truth, not when it satisfies ego. They're not silent because they're scared. They're silent because they've already decided. This moment doesn't deserve noise. And here's the paradox. The more peaceful your response, the more powerful your presence. Because the strongest people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who can hold stillness when everything around them begs for chaos. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to win the argument. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just keep walking, quietly, unapologetically, unshaken. That's the discipline. That's the edge. That's the fort within. Criticism doesn't shake strong people. It only reveals who was never grounded to begin with. If every comment throws you off, if every opinion stings, if every disagreement becomes a wound, it's not about what they said. It's about how attached you are. The Stoic builds a mind that holds still, no matter the noise outside, not by becoming emotionless, but by mastering emotion, not by ignoring pain, but by choosing not to be led by it. This is how they do it. 1. They define themselves from within. They don't wait for applause to feel valid. They don't need someone to agree before they feel certain. They ask, am I aligned with my values? If yes, no external voice can cancel that. 2. They detach from outcome. When you speak, create, or act with intention, your job ends there. You don't control how it's received. You don't shape-shift for acceptance. You release what's not yours to manage. 3. They audit their emotional triggers. The Stoic notices, why does this criticism hit so hard? Is there truth in it, or just an old wound it touched? And most times the pain isn't from the present. It's from unhealed expectations. So instead of reacting outward, they reflect inward. 4. They train stillness. Like a warrior trains with weight, the Stoic trains with silence. Every moment they don't defend, they get stronger. Every time they choose not to explain, they reinforce their boundaries. And here's the secret. You don't become unshakable overnight. You become unshakable by staying rooted when you feel the urge to flinch, and choosing stillness anyway. You resist the bait. You hold the frame. You remain the calm in the storm, not the storm itself. And over time, you stop fearing criticism, because there's nothing left in you that needs protection. You've faced your triggers. You've chosen discipline. You've owned your path. You've built a mind that doesn't break every time the world has something to say. They misunderstood you. They doubted you. They said you were wrong, too cold, too distant, too intense. You wanted to explain. You wanted to defend. You wanted to fix how they saw you. But then you stopped, because you realized you don't need to win. You need to stay free. That's what the Stoic knows. Winning the argument doesn't mean you win your peace. Correcting their perception doesn't mean they see your truth. Getting the last word doesn't mean you held your ground. Sometimes the greatest victory is walking away with your integrity untouched and your silence intact. Marcus Aurelius wrote, when another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside and see what sort of people they are. In other words, before you react, look deeper. Are they projecting their fears? Are they attacking what they don't understand? Are they testing your stillness because they haven't found theirs? The Stoic doesn't fall for the surface. They look through it. And here's what they remember. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're not here to prove yourself to strangers. You're not here to explain your evolution to people still stuck in your past. You're here to grow, to lead, to hold your line. Criticism may follow, judgment may echo, misunderstanding may linger, but you walk anyway, not because it's easy, but because your freedom is worth more than their approval. You've trained for this. Every pause, every breath, every moment you held silence instead of reacting. That was discipline. And now, you don't just survive criticism, you own it. You use it when it's useful. You drop it when it's not. You move forward without looking back for permission, because that's what Stoics do. They don't flinch, they don't beg, they don't break. They stay free, quietly.